In a quaint little village nestled between rolling hills and lush green fields, there lived an old man named John. John had been a part of the village for as long as anyone could remember. His face, lined with wrinkles, told stories of years filled with both joy and hardship. His eyes, though aged, sparkled with kindness and wisdom, always offering warmth to those around him. John lived alone in a small but cozy cottage at the edge of the village. Though his wife had passed away many years ago, and his children had moved to faraway lands, John never felt lonely. The villagers loved him dearly, often visiting his home to seek his advice, share their troubles, or simply to enjoy his company. His door was always open, and in return for his kindness, the villagers brought him food, firewood, and small gifts, ensuring that John never went without. Despite having little in the way of material wealth, John lived a rich life, surrounded by love and respect. One chilly autumn morning, as the leaves began to turn fiery shades of red and orange, John decided it was time to gather some wood for his fireplace. The cold had crept in earlier than usual that year, and he knew the nights would only grow colder. Wrapping himself in his old woolen coat, John grabbed his axe and headed towards the forest, which stood just beyond the village. The forest, dense with tall oaks and maples, had always been a place of solace for John. He enjoyed the stillness, the rustling of the leaves in the wind, and the occasional sight of a deer or a rabbit darting through the underbrush. As John ventured deeper into the woods, his footsteps crunching softly on the carpet of fallen leaves, he stumbled upon something unusual. There, half buried in the ground, was an old, large pot. Its surface was tarnished, and it looked as though it had been hidden there for many years, forgotten by time. Curiosity piqued, John knelt down and brushed away the dirt, revealing more of the pot's ancient surface. With a creak, he pried the lid open and his breath caught in his throat. Inside, the pot was filled to the brim with glittering gold coins. Each one gleamed in the dappled sunlight that filtered through the trees, their edges worn smooth from years of disuse. John's heart leapt with joy. He had never seen so much gold in his life. His mind raced with possibilities. He could finally afford to live a life of comfort and ease. He imagined himself in a grand house, with plush furniture and a roaring fireplace, sitting in an elegant chair as the winter winds howled outside. But as quickly as his dreams formed, a practical thought crossed his mind: the pot was far too heavy for him to carry alone. John was old, and the pot, filled with so much gold, seemed immovable. But John was determined. His dreams of luxury and ease were too vivid to let go. So, with the resourcefulness that had served him well throughout his life, John set about finding a solution. He gathered some sturdy wooden planks and fashioned a makeshift slide, tying a thick cloth around the pot to secure it. Grabbing the cloth, John heaved with all his might, slowly dragging the pot behind him. The journey was arduous, and the weight of the gold tested his strength. His arms and back ached, and his breath came in ragged gasps. But with every step, John reminded himself of the comforts that awaited him, spurring himself onward. However, as he trudged along, something strange began to happen. At first, John didn't notice, focused as he was on his task. But when he stopped to catch his breath and looked into the pot, he froze. The gold coins were no longer gold. Instead, they had turned to silver, their once brilliant sheen dulled to a paler luster. John felt a pang of disappointment, but he quickly shrugged it off. Silver was still valuable, after all. It wasn't the gold he had dreamed of, but with enough silver, he could still buy a nice house, perhaps not as grand as he had imagined, but comfortable nonetheless. He continued pulling the pot, telling himself that it didn't matter, that silver would still change his life for the better. But the forest had more surprises in store for him. As John pulled the pot further, his legs trembling from exhaustion, the silver began to change again. This time, the coins turned a dull, rusty brown iron. John stopped in his tracks, staring at the pot in disbelief. His heart sank. Iron? How could this be? The wealth that had once promised him a life of luxury had now turned to something far less valuable. For a moment, despair washed over John. All his dreams of a new life, of living in comfort and ease, seemed to vanish like smoke in the wind. He had imagined a life free of worry, where he would no longer have to rely on the kindness of his neighbors. Now, even that small hope was slipping away.